Thank you for joining me here today. I am Agabwe Kenile Peter from Richflood International Limited. I'm here this morning to talk about review of environmental laws, principles, and design guiding investments towards sustainable development. As for our training this morning, our training outline as follows. We're going to look at international and local environmental laws. Also try to see what are the functions of environmental laws. Also, we're going to see the guiding principles for sustainable development, the environment, and then and development. Also, we're going to look at international legal commitments, principles and design, roles of legislators, reports and planning, and finally, we'll look at accountability. For the purpose of today's discussion, we're going to discuss a lot about the environment, and it is important for us to know that the environment includes water, air, land, and all plants and human beings and animals living within. And the interrelationship existing between amongst each and every one of them. For environmental law covers the legislation, regulations, guidelines, and standards adopted to control activities with potential effects on countries' environment. And further, we're going to look at, we're going to introduce the concept of sustainable development. Sustainable development is that development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. For environmental protection and sustainable development are hardly within the contemplation of investors. However, in the recent past, there has been a rethink of the objectives of the investors and government actors in industrial development. Because of the pace of environmental degradation as a result of industrial development, it is obvious that without sound national laws, management strategies, the nation's increasing scales of economic activities in coming decades and beyond would pose serious challenges for environmental management, especially on the fragile natural environment. And therefore, the roles of laws and regulation as ready tools in achieving sustainable development cannot be overemphasized. So in order for us to go further into this discussion, it will be very good for us to look at the brief synopsis of international environmental laws and convention. We have international environmental laws such as the World Bank Group, Environmental Health and Safety Guideline. We have the Equator Principle, the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity, United Nations Convention on Climate Change, Convention to regulate international trade in endangered species of flora and fauna, Convention on the conservation of migratory species of wild animals. So these are some of these are few synopses of international laws and conventions available today. For the at a national level, as talking about Nigeria, Nigeria has some basic environmental policies. These environmental policies are contained in the laws of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, that is pursuant to Section 20 of the Constitution. Nigeria environmental laws consist of the EIA Act of 2014, the National Environmental Standard and Regulation Enforcement Agency, the NESRA 2007, harmful waste degree at Public Health Law, Nigeria Criminal Code. So these are the few national environmental laws in place in Nigeria. And all of these laws, both national and international, are tailored towards achieving a sustainable development. Achieving a sustainable development. For the purpose of today's discussion, we're going to focus our attention on the United States post-2015 commitment towards a sustainable development. And now let us see what are some of the functions of environmental law. What are some of the functions of environmental law? The first one is environmental law sets offenses and penalties for causing harm to the environment, which is not authorized, and also assess, control, or stop certain activities such as land use development before they are carried out. Environmental laws also set policies, standards for how activities will be controlled and how environmental decisions and approval will be made. It also enables each members of the public to take part in environmental decision making. And finally, environmental law also creates regulatory structures for environmental management, such as regulatory agencies. And further, let us now look at some of these guiding principles for sustainable development. The guiding principles for sustainable development. The following sets of shared principles based on the principles form the basis for sustainable development. First one is the living within environmental limits. Living within environmental limits. Now, the limitation, irrespective of the limitation within the environment, resources and biodiversity are to be improved. Now, ensure that natural resources needed for life are unimpaired and remain so for future generation. So that is to say that this principle puts into consideration the limitations we have within our environment, and is trying to see how this can be improved so that our lives will not be impaired, and also it will remain for future generations to use. And also another principle is ensuring a strong health and just society. And this includes meeting the diverse needs of all people in existing and future communities, promoting personal well-being, social cohesion and inclusion, and creating equal opportunities for all. So this is one of the principles, the second principles for sustainable development. And we have the third one as achieving a sustainable economy. How does a sustainable development ensure that we have a sustainable development? Is by building a strong, stable, and sustainable economy which provides prosperity and opportunity for all, and in which environmental and social costs fall on those who impose them. That is the law of the polluter pay. And efficient resources is used. Efficient resources is used in incentivize. Efficient resources is used. And finally, also on these guiding principles for sustainable development, we have using sound science responsibly. And now, how do we ensure that is done? Is ensuring policy is developed and implemented on the basis of strong scientific evidence, while taking into account scientific uncertainty, as well as public attitudes and values. Okay, we still have one more principle, and this has to do with promotion of a good governance. Promotion of good governance. And that is done by actively promoting effective participative system of governance in all levels of society, engaging people's creativity, energy, and diversity. And having said that concerning the principles of sustainable development, now it is important for us to see the roles, environmental roles, environmental roles as a foundation for development. So how does the environment comes in as a foundation for development? And to do that, we're going to present certain questions that will help us to understand the role of environment in development. Now, why is the environment important for social and economical development? The environment comprised of non-living materials and living organisms that interact together as ecosystem, provides a society and economy with a wide range of valuable goods and services. For example, ecosystem provides us with food, fuel, and fiber, protects people from storms, flooding, pollutions, and other hazards, and are integral components of our cultural and spiritual identity. Some of these ecosystem goods and services cannot be obtained or replaced by another means. And so the environment should therefore be managed as a critical capital assets and as essential infrastructure for sustainable development. So this answers the questions as to why is the environment important for social and economic development. And now let us look at another question about how can development benefit the environment to be measured and valued in practice. So how can development benefits development benefits of the environment to be measured and valued in practice? In recent years, scientists, economists, and other experts have made considerable progress towards accurate measurement, valuation, and accounting of benefits that the environment provides to the people. Counting of benefits that the environment provides to the people. The UN Statistical Commission and its partners have developed frameworks and standards designed for use by national governments for this purpose. And in particular, the UN framework for the development of environmental statistics and the UN system of environmental economic accounting. So these tools goes beyond, the economy to support integrated analysis of the environment, society, and also to promote and also to enable, monitoring and sustainable development. What are the relevant international, legal, and political commitments? And that brings us to the heart of today's discussion. Like I've hinted earlier, we're going to look at the post-2015 commitment endorsed by the United Nations. Okay, in 2015, member countries of the United Nations endorsed a series of commitments concerning environmental and sustainable development, namely the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, featuring a set of 17 Sustainable Development Goals and 169 associated targets. The Paris Agreement on Climate Change, establishing a global framework for coordinating national action to mitigate climate change and adapt to its adverse effects. Okay, Addis Ababa's action agenda on the financing for development, and this is complemented by the achieve biodiversity targets that were agreed in 2015 by state parties to the convention, on the biological. All right, so and going further also, we're going to look at what are environmental actions. What environmental actions do the 2015 global commitments require at national level? So how is this applicable to our country, Nigeria? The first is important for us to know that each of these 2015 commitments calls for a range of substantive and procedural actions and strategies and overlaps between them. Now, for environmental lawmaking and oversight at national levels, so this can be summarized collectively as requiring action to: number one, the environmental actions required at the national level is to improve monitoring, reporting, and assessment of the environment, including flows of benefits to the environment provides to the people. And also for the number two, this action would also increase the level of efforts and resources invested in conservation, restoration, and enhancement the environment and associated flow of goods and services. And number three, the environmental action ensure that costs and benefits associated with decision making about the environment are distributed equitably in accordance with the 2030 agenda plea, and no one will be left behind. So the pledge of this agenda is that no one will be left behind. And finally, it ensures that decisions concerning the environment and the sustainable development are made in an inclusive and a participatory manner to ensure that the widest possible range of voices, views, and interests are represented, considered, and heard. And having said that, we need to look at important principles and design features for environmental laws. Important principles and designs features for environmental laws. What key principles should be imbibed in national environmental law in order to achieve sustainable development? What key principles should be imbibed in national environmental law in order to achieve sustainable development? Three key principles should be embedded in the national environmental law in order to align them with the 2015 commitments. First on the list is the need for good governance. So decision about the environment should be based on the best available evidence and should operate in an inclusive and accountable manner, open to all stakeholders at all multi-level of scale. And number two, important key principle is the need for health, wealth, and well-being of all. So sustainable development would ensure the health, wealth, and the well-being of all. And this can be achieved when decisions about environment should contribute to social and economic infrastructure. So decision about the environment should contribute also to social and economic infrastructure, wealth creation, well-being, and poverty elevation, so that no one is left behind, in particular women, children, indigenous people, and other marginalized groups. The third key principle is the need to maintain and ensure that the environment, maintain and enhance the environment and natural resources. And that is All decision-making must recognize that the environment is a foundation on which human health, wealth, and well-being are built. And so that means our decisions must account for and maintain the full range of values and benefits provided by the environment and natural resources. Still on the principles, still on important principles, design and features of the environment. Let us try to examine what's okay. Sorry. Okay. So let us try to examine key design features of environmental laws and lawmaking have provided effective. Okay, let me take it again. What key design features of environmental laws and lawmaking have proved effective at supporting progress towards sustainable development? So let us look at the key design features of environmental laws that have proved effective. Number one is participation, incentives, and empowerment. Participation, incentives, and empowerment. Environmental lawmaking process should involve diverse stakeholders, should involve diverse stakeholders, including but not limited to local communities, businesses, civil societies, and subject experts. And it is important for us to know that there is no single best practice approach to environmental lawmaking for sustainable development. The task is complex and specific to national circumstances, cutting across different policies, institutes, and sectors. However, the characteristics and ingredients of effective environmental laws and regulations can be summarized as presented. And also we'll look at the second important design, key design. It's all about the mainstream of the environment across government and society. Mainstreaming of the environment across government and society. Environmental laws and lawmaking should ensure that environmental considerations are integrated across all parts of government, in particular within the institutes responsible for decision making about economic policies. Okay, number three key design is the need for alignment with development needs and priority. Alignment with development needs and priorities. Environmental laws and lawmaking must support, respect, and closely align with the rights of all people to live healthy, happy, and meaningful life. Environmental conservation should account for the impacts and dependency on local communities and recognize the role of local people as stewards of ecosystem and resources that are valuable to at national and international scales. So decision making should prioritize the protection of ecosystem that provides critical goods and services to people, communities, and country. Okay. Finally, talking about key designs, we're going to look at flexibility and response. Flexibility and response. Flexibility and response. Flexibility and response. Okay. To accommodate complex and complexity and dynamism of the modern world, environmental laws and lawmaking should facilitate responsive and reiterate implementation of government policies. Implementation of government policies. They should also support efforts in the private sector to adopt and refine voluntary self-complying measures through inclusive partnership. Inclusive partnership. And in order for us to fully translate some of these commitments at the international level, integrate it into our local content, the legislatures have very important roles to play in promoting this implementation of the sustainable development. And now let us look at some of the roles that legislators have to play. Okay, we're going to look at key actions that can be taken by legislators subject to relevant legal and constitutional requirements. So key actions that can be taken by legislators subject to relevant legal and constitutional requirements include the following. Number one, dialogue with institutions and officials. Dialogue with institutions and officials. Identify and seek ongoing dialogue. Identify and seek ongoing dialogue with the government institutions and officials that are responsible for implementing global commitments towards the environment and sustainable development. And also, the legislators can lodge formal parliamentary processes that's involving parliamentary colleagues, government, and other stakeholders in a formal process to define national action plans for achieving the sustainable development goals and implementing international commitments concerning the environment and development in a coherent and a convergent manner. Legislators also can establish coordinating committees or dialogues involving parliamentary colleagues and representatives from multiple parts of government to foster and secure whole of government approach to decision making about environment and sustainable development. It is particularly important in this context to involve decision makers with responsibilities concerning employment, infrastructure, investment, natural resources, and then the microeconomy. And going further, we need to see the environmental and sustainable development plan, developments reporting and planning. Now, how do we achieve the reporting of sustainable development and the planning of it? Okay, in order to implement international commitments, countries will need to integrate their substance into national laws, sector strategies, foreign policies, and budgets. Now, this depends on regular reporting and planning. So effective laws, policies, reporting, and planning concerning the environment and sustainable development all depend on the availability of relevant data, statistics, and other evidence. This point is recognized in the Sustainable Development Goal targets 15, the subsection 15 subsection 9, which calls on countries by 2020 to integrate ecosystem biodiversity value into national and local planning, development processes, poverty reduction strategies, and accounts. Poverty reduction strategies and accounts. And finally, on this very presentation, we're going to look at accountability for action contrary to sustainable development. How do I account for actions that are contrary to sustainable development? Effective governance of the environment to achieve sustainable development objectives depends on decision makers being held to account for actions, that might be contrary to those objectives. And that is the environmental standards do not inevitably strengthen over time and can be vulnerable to sudden change in national policy. That prioritize short-term interests over long-term sustainable development. So these are some of the challenges. And also, the key accounting mechanism that can establish and or utilize or be utilized by parliamentarians include the following. The first one is a justifiable right to challenge environmental decisions that are contrary to sustainable development. The non-judicial settlement mechanism for disputes concerning environment and sustainable development. Non-judicial settlement mechanism for disputes concerning environment and sustainable development. Or negotiation, mediation, arbitration, and conciliation can depend on the context, offered benefits in comparison to judicial dispute settlements. They can be less time-consuming, less expensive, increase access to justice, and encourage ownership over constructive and durable settlements. Ownership over constructive and durable settlements. So the legal framework have been established in a number of countries to provide alternative mechanisms, settlement for environmental disputes. Okay, on scrutiny of decision-making by independent bodies. Scrutiny of decision-making by independent body. A number of countries have established independent public bodies to scrutinize executive decision-making concerning the environment and sustainable development. And finally, the recognition of constitutional rights and responsibilities concerning the environment and sustainable development. And we can see from recent research that a growing number of countries, over 70 countries, have imbibed such rights in their national constitution, establishing a durable grounds to challenge government decision making. Okay, at this note, I want to say thank you for listening, and I want to ask if we have any questions.